it is very important to develop or to identify the developmental areas in each one of us, because we can all change. We can all build a muscle. So for me, it's like, why wouldn't we add skills and tools onto ourselves to grow those competencies inside of us?
Any successful relationship starts with finding your center, the truth at the core of who you are. Only then can you develop the ability to truly connect with someone else. Concentric is about aligning with people who share a common center. This show gives you the tools and the skills to do just that through practical training, real-life stories and examples, and in-depth interviews with people who have taken this journey and come out the other side better for it. Welcome to Concentric. We're glad you're here. Welcome to episode 14 of Concentric. I'm Jason Croft, and Gary De Rodriguez and I dig in today around the aspect of using data to not only find that right candidate for a specific job at your company, but for those folks who are in those roles now, going through with some assessments that really help you determine, is this person in the right role? And if not, either how do we train up that person or find that perfect role for them based on their strengths? We certainly have 100 different assessments that are out there, and anybody in the business world is familiar with DISC and Myers-Briggs and all of those different assessment tools. What's really interesting is not just the concept that we dig into today around the importance of going through that assessment process even before someone is hired, but also the one that Gary's talking about here in this episode. It's unique in not only how it assesses that individual, but it also goes through numerous jobs in terms of who you should be looking for that role. But then a whole separate layer to it is a training aspect to allow a manager to make that assessment of an employee. For instance, see that, this role requires this. The employee has all of this, but they're so close, right? Like they really need to develop this to really thrive in this role. And so now there's training to go along with this. So not only does that level up that employee who goes through that training, but we all have data now to measure against. The employee knows what they're shooting for, and they have action steps and then data to measure that. The manager has that of like, oh, it's time for this person to have a raise or be promoted or whatever that may be based on this data and where they are in all of this. So I love this aspect because we certainly talk about the humanness of everything and how to be better at all of that. And so it may seem counterintuitive at first to think, okay, we're applying data and numbers and this and that, to assess somebody, but it's really the data of digging into who they really are, which gets us to build up their great humanness in that role and help them, help the company, and really improve an entire company culture by implementing something like this. All right, let's jump in. Welcome to Concentric. Gary, how's it going?
It's going great, my friend. How are you?
Oh, I'm wonderful. This is fun. I know we go back and forth a little bit here. At the core of everything of this show is people, right? It's relationships and how those relationships and those connections manifest in all areas of life. And that's the core of the show. Sometimes we're talking about romantic relationships, parent-child relationships, and very often, because we love the subject too, is business relationships. And that's, where you do a lot of work in, is going into companies and helping them. And I think those two aspects of your expertise coming together, so powerful, when you can take the the sort of what's important to business and making sure all of those things are checked, but you bring this human focus to it, everything skyrockets. It's wonderful, and that's something we wanted to dig into today with the crazy, job situation, employee situation, lack of employee situation that's going on right now. And I know you work with companies all the time, and you've kind of it's fresh on your mind because you've been dealing with it. Folks who are just like, Gary, what do I do here? This is tough. And you've got something. I mean, kind of the topic we wanted to dig into was this data-driven approach to job placement, getting people put in the right positions, which on the surface with somebody coming in listening might seem counterintuitive, like, oh, data, numbers, blah, blah, blah. I thought this was more a get that human in there and feelings and emotion and all that. But it really, it's that combination of both. And really, I think that's what you're talking about here, is using the data to tell you about that human so that everything gets, connected the right way. So dig into that a little bit, both on sort of the advice you were starting to give, your client earlier this week, and what you see as kind of a solution to what so many companies are struggling with right now.
Yeah. I'd be really happy to, because there's a newer personality assessment that has come out on the market. I was blessed enough to have been getting phone calls from their person who was looking for reps for this particular assessment, and they probably had conversations with me for about 2 years. And finally I said, okay, well, let me take the assessment and let me see what it is, because I've got all these other tools that I'm using, and I don't really want to add another one to it. And so I took the assessment, and when I got the results back and got the debrief, I was like, wow, it's like this really is something I've not seen before in the market. So I got pretty excited about it, and I said, okay, I want to get trained on the platform. I want to roll it out to my existing, corporate clients right now. And so I began this very interesting journey into psychometric assessments. And this is like the latest one out there. It's pretty cool. It's mobile. It goes from boomers to Gen Zs, and it has all that kind of data in there. And the reason that I think it's important is because for employee satisfaction, oftentimes you have the wrong personality into the wrong role, and therefore the employee doesn't do well. If an employee doesn't do well in the job role, what happens is they don't have contentment, they don't have satisfaction. They've got more frustration. They've got more irritation. They may even have more stress and more anxiety because they can't fit themselves into the job role in a way that the job role requires. And
it may not be a frustration with the company at all, no. Which the translation might be like, oh, they hate it here. The employee may say, I hate it here, but it's not the here, it's the what they're doing at the job.
And then what most employees do is they get very frustrated with their direct manager. And so the manager is going, well, why can't you do it this way? And why can't you learn this? And you did this wrong again, and da-da-da-da-da. And so the employee starts like being kind of aggravated by the manager, and the manager, if they're not trained well, becomes less civil. And over time, the employee just blows out of space. We cannot afford to lose good talent. So therefore, the ability to have a methodology for helping us place the right person with the right skills and talents and personality into the right role, it isn't about, oh, we're going to eliminate these people from the job role. No, there's an inbuilt coaching program within each one of these assessments that helps the manager actually build that employee up in areas in their personality where they are outside the success pattern. They need coaching to bring them inside the success pattern with a prolonged coaching development plan attached to the assessments. So this is not about exclusion. This is about inclusion and development. So I want to make that really clear. So I got pretty excited about that because it had that human element to it. I've seen a lot of assessments like, well, you just don't fit. You're like a throwaway, next. And we can't afford that now, nor do I think that that's a moral way to treat people. But what I found most important about the whole process is that it was so customized. So I was working with this luxury real estate brokerage in La Jolla. And the broker said, look, I need to do assessments. I'm building a large team. He had about 40 people then. And I said, okay, great. Give me your 4 top performers. And he goes, okay. So I assessed his 4 top performers. The platform actually condenses those personality qualities and creates a success pattern, like an algorithm, a success pattern that then every single agent employed currently could be measured against and see where they were in the success pattern or outside the success pattern. And this gave the in-house coach an absolute incredible coaching direction to take each individual employee. So he created a development plan for each particular person that was outside those success patterns. When any new candidate would apply, saying, look, I'd love to belong to your team, we put them through the assessment to see where they land within that success pattern. Therefore, what the broker said was like, he said, oh my God, I'm no longer hiring in the dark. I interview, I get references, I do background checks, and yet I still hire wrong. I don't get it. And I'm like, that's because you can't see the deeper unconscious drivers in that person's personality that will help you actually know that that person has the qualities and the capabilities to be a high-performing luxury agent. And what he said to me about 6 months after we rolled this out in his company, he said, wow, because now I have faith that the energy, time, training, and personal and financial investment I'm making in my new candidates, I have more possibility of them winning and staying and being retained than I ever did before. Because he said, I would train all these people, all my energy and money would go down the drain because they would just quit right after the training.
And it makes him not want to even continue to grow and bring it. Yeah.
And made him far more aggravated. And so now he's like, that isn't happening anymore. Like, these people are staying and they're actually starting to get out, even if they're brand new agents, they're starting to get out there and really produce. And I said, that's because you have to have information on the deep structure of that individual before you hire them and make sure they have the innate personality qualities to be that matches your highest performing agents that you currently have. So you no longer hire blind. You no longer hire in a way that, like, you don't throw out the conversation and the background checks and the other things that you would normally do to interview an individual. But you add this extra piece of psychometric data to the mix. And then you get a job match on the report. The initial report, the summary report, will give you a job match that shows where their personality meets the personality qualities of the 4 top performers on the team, and that gives you a percentage job match. Anything above a 75, I personally think an 80% job match, they're going to be a pretty good investment. So this becomes another way of being able to select, to develop, and to retain talent. The gatekeeper is always HR or at the beginning of the hiring process. You have to be able to hire right. And in-house with your existing employees, you really have to show an investment and a desire to evolve them and let them know where their developmental areas are so they know what to focus on. A lot of times people say, well, you just didn't produce last month. You didn't meet your KPIs. Well, they don't know what they don't know, especially if they're not being coached by a pretty awake, aware manager. They don't know what to develop. They don't know how to develop it. So this gives the manager a coaching program to help the employee actually evolve themselves in a strategic and data-driven manner and then train the managers how to be managers, coach, and then you start having greater retention, higher performance, and better culture.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's strong. Define for us when you talk about identifying those success patterns in somebody. What does that mean? Is that behavior, mindset? What is that?
Let me go over the 7 personality traits that are measured. So what's measured first is reasoning ability. This has nothing to do with IQ. It has to do with how fast you can take complex pieces of information and actualize them into a solution. So for me, like I measure out of 5. I'm not like the dullest knife in the drawer, and I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. But for me, what that said to me, and it's very true, when I'm learning anything new, I have to do it a few times before it really sinks in. When I first will read the instructions or trying to learn a new process, I'll be like, I don't get it yet. And then I'll go back and I'll read it again. Okay, it's getting a little clearer. I'll read it again, and then I'll do it. I'm like, okay, I got it. Some people can just look at it and go, piece of cake, okay, I'm off and running. Other people will be like, okay, now I really have to take this home. I have to study it all weekend, and then I'll get it. Once they get it, they're a beast. They just get out there and do it. But oftentimes it's about what the job is, what a percentage of reasoning ability they need for the job to not struggle on the job. Like if I was an air traffic controller, there would be a big mess on the tarmac because I just cannot take rapid pieces of information, put it together in a solution really fast, and then boom, I'm done. That's not me. So I know I could never do that job, or I wouldn't want to do that job. And if I did that job, I would be highly stressed. Not a good fit for me. The next one is competitiveness. And that simply means like there's no good or bad scores in this. So I want to be really, really clear. There's no good or bad scores. It depends on how your score matches the job description. So if you're a single out there badass sales person, you're going to want to have pretty high competitiveness. If you're working as a manager on a team, bringing your team with you, you're going to want to have about mid-level competitiveness to lower competitiveness because you're going to want the team to win, not just you. High competitiveness, running a big team, not such a great fit because they're not going to be so interested in what the others do. Or they're going to pull them along as much as they can, but they're going to be very focused on them winning. So there's no good or bad scores. It's how the score matches the job pattern. So next is sense of urgency. Now, I've got a kind of high sense of urgency. I have a tendency not to cross the T's and dot the I's because I'm like, let's get it done, let's get it done, let's get it done. Not necessarily good for someone who's a quality assurance person, because they're going to look through all the things that could be wrong and do it completely right and be very invested in that. I'm like a pretty quick study, and I'll just like, boom, go to the finish line. I wouldn't be good doing risk assessments and quality assurance because I'm going to go too fast. Next is take charge, which is, will I jump in front of the bus and just take charge of everything, pushing aside any other person who thinks they can do the job? Will I just run to the front and go, I'm going to do this and lead the group? That can be a good quality if you are put at that position of a leader, if it matches the job pattern. It can be a very poor quality if you're working as in a manufacturing position and you're stamping out, like metal parts, and you want to take charge of everything. You're going to do your very best to run all over the manager that's, you're directly reporting to. Or if you have a manager and they've got really low take charge, that means someone with high take charge at a lower position is going to usurp your power and attempt to always be criticizing you or wanting to give direction and think they know how to do it better. So I'm just trying to put this into perspective. There's no good or bad. It all depends on the job role.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. If you want to take a deep dive into the concepts Gary is talking about here and so much more, I've got something for you. From time to time on this show, you may hear us talk about Gary's course, Creating Incredible Relationships. This course is the culmination of Gary's 35 years worth of seminars, one-on-one training, and transforming the lives of over 11,000 people on 4 different continents. To learn how to build alignment and heck, just get along with others sometimes, we all require skills that are not commonly known and are not out there in the relationship development space. We need help. That's why Gary put this course together. The content in it is powerful and comprehensive. But just like we've done with this show, it's put together in a way that's easily consumable and quickly implemented. To gain the ability to take every relationship you have or want to have to the next level, go to garyscourse.com and see how to get started. Now, back to the show.
Manageability is another one, which is if you're high in manageability, you will follow policy and procedure. You will read the manual. You'll do your best to do it according to what the established policies are. If you're low in manageability, you're going to rebel. You're going to be like an Elon Musk. You're going to want to do it your way. You're going to want to innovate a shortcut. You're going to want to do all that, probably without knowing enough information about the job yet to shortcut it, but you're going to try to do it anyways. So there's all these different principles. The next one is people contact, and the last one is attitude. Attitude is not necessarily doing bad attitude or good attitude. High on attitude is, I have like a rosy outlook most of the time, pretty positive, optimistic guy. Low is like, I'm going to be analyzing the risks. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. And if you think you're authority, I don't feel really comfortable with that because I have a lack of trust. So I'm going to be asking you a whole bunch of questions and probably offending you just a tiny bit because I'm not going to trust everything that like you tell me. So that's good if you're in risk assessment or quality assurance, if you have a low, sort of attitude quality. But if not, a higher attitude quality working in a team would probably be preferable. So you get to look at all of these qualities, how they intersect, and then what the overall propensity of that person's behavior is going to be hardwired to do. So these are some of the traits that when I put together the extended disc, which gives us the behavioral side of it, and then we couple that with a psychometric assessment process, which gives us the deep hardwired side of it. We get a very complete picture of the individual. And then what's going to fit best for the job role. Now, the job roles are always defined by, we can build out a pattern, a custom pattern, but there's also a whole library of just about every job role where they've already taken 4 top performers and they already have an existing success pattern for that job role. So it's a pretty really well-formed system for providing people with a data-driven methodology for picking the right candidate for the right role. And I personally love it because it's been stone cold accurate.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And then I can imagine, because of that training component, I imagine the art of it versus the science then becomes maybe some nuances in a particular role or a particular company with this role, because that role at this company may be completely different than, at this startup or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
But also that massaging and finding the balance of this person, they're in this role, we see how they're lined out, and are they close enough to where now we'll put them through the training portion of it because they're kind of deficient in this one area or it doesn't come as natural. They can get it. They're close enough. They could get it. Where does all that, is that just like the messy stuff you have to work through? But where does that come in from? Like basically play on your strengths, don't worry about your weaknesses, or vice versa. Where does all that play into it?
Well, for me, I'm a fan of strength, finder and playing to the strengths of an individual, and I do believe that that's a good thing. But I also believe that it is very important to develop or to identify the developmental areas in each one of us, because we can all change. We can all build a muscle. Why would we settle to just have great calves and great quadriceps, but we've ignored our whole upper body. Why wouldn't we go for a balanced physique? So for me, it's like, why wouldn't we add skills and tools onto ourselves to grow those competencies inside of us? Like in the DISC, I'm a high I. And S, I have very little attention for detail and engineering and all of that. But I wanted those skills. So when I got a job as a trainee draftsman in the largest naval engineering company in the world, I jumped at the chance. And I worked my way up 7 levels of promotion in that company over 7 years. And I eventually became a senior piping designer and designed the firefighting systems for 2 of the aircraft carriers in the US fleet, and for the hangar bays and the flight decks. And I was so, the word isn't proud, I was so satisfied that I was able to take a complex, like a million moving parts. I had to order all the nuts, the bolts, the gaskets, the metal differences I had to be completely aware of. I had to size the pipes right for gravity drainage if I was doing a collecting, holding, and transfer system. So there were all these things that I had to be aware of, read all the specs, make sure they were all in alignment with military specs, and then order all the parts, do all the drawings, and when the ship went in the shipyard, they could actually install it according to my drawings. Now, I could never, ever, ever dreamt that I would have built that kind of muscle. Because before that, I was like this artist guy that, that was the biggest thing I ever did, up to that point. But I wanted a marketable skill that built my mental capabilities. And that did. It gave me an edge that I never would have had if I would have played to my strengths and hung out in a job that I felt so comfortable with. For me, you do not grow in your comfort zone. You grow outside of your comfort zone and you build that muscle. So the developmental plans encased in the coaching plans, encased in these assessments, help people evolve those developmental areas of them to help them rise up to a higher level of performance, which means a greater job satisfaction, less stress, less anxiety on the job, because they know what to focus on. The manager knows, and then it turns into a measurable process. So at review time, the manager can go, wow, like they've done X, Y, and Z, and this is what they've been working on for the last 6 months. Absolutely, they deserve a raise. Instead of going in to see your manager, and the manager goes, well, from my perception, you haven't done a da-da-da. And the employee's going, I have most certainly done that. And I cannot believe that you never saw it. Because the manager is not working off of some system that is measurable to be able to advance that employee in their salary, in performance. They can measure the performance increase.
And that's just better. That's better for the company. That's better for the employee, everything.
Because that's where employees bolt out of companies, because when they feel like they're not seen, they're not heard, they're not recognized, like they're not even important enough for their manager to see the work that they're putting in, because a manager can't measure it yet, that is where employees leave. So this is for me, this process is an overall talent selection, development, and retention process.
Yeah, I love that. And that is, I think that whole topic that's the art part of it, in finding those things that, it's not in my comfort zone, but I can see a real advantage to developing that skill, right? And finding that sometimes it's just a hunch. Sometimes it's just like, I don't know what it is, but I want to be good at that. I'm horrible, and I had that with speaking and meeting people and networking and all of that stuff. I was the furthest thing in the world from anyone who would do that. And I made that conscious decision, and it's transformed my life, right? Wow. And at the same time, I'm also a big believer in not spending all your time trying to bring up these weaknesses just because it's a weakness, or, lesser than this person or that person, just cause, right? Like, oh, I should be better at this. Well, no, I'm amazing at this, so let me dive in further. And again, that's the art, I think, is finding where to ebb and flow with that and focus on the strength or focus on the weakness, just depending on that circumstance.
I totally agree. What I love about this assessment is it actually pinpoints what it is you require to develop to be great at this job role. That's what I love about it. And so for me, anyways, in my work ethic, if I'm going to go into a job, I want to do as good as I can possibly do at that job. And so if there's some methodology for me to understand what it's going to take for me innately to increase my own skills to better give me the opportunity to be as great as the best people on that job could be, then I'm going to take it. I'm going to learn from it.
Yeah, and I think that's why putting something like this almost at the forefront, almost in a marketing type of way, could be so beneficial to companies to be so forward in letting potential candidates know, like, hey, this is a part of this is how much we care about your happiness at the company and your congruence in that role. This is how much we care about it because of this, assessment that we do and training that we do and all of that. I think to lead with something like that could be really strong, especially right now when companies need any differentiator they can get.
Because people want to develop. They want to develop themselves. I remember I was training for a very large pharmaceutical distribution chain down in Australia. They were the largest chain of drugstores in Australia and are in Western Australia at the time. Now they're nationwide. But I remember I'd done a lot of work with the leadership team, but I hadn't done any work with the general teams. And I remember going in there. There was the training room. There's about 300 people there, and the CEO gets up and he goes, "I have no idea what he's going to do for these next 3 days. I have no brief on the curriculum, but I know what he's done for our leadership team, so I have faith." And then he said, "I don't care if you're with us for 3 months or for 30 years. I want your life to improve as a consequence of being in relationship with my company. And this is our way of helping you evolve yourself." And then he said, "I know whatever Gary's going to teach is going to help you evolve." And then he just handed the mic over to me and I started. But that kind of leadership, that kind of intentionality towards all the pharmacy employees from the top to the bottom was so palatable in that room that day, because he means what he says. He's one of the most incredible CEOs I've ever met. And this was years and years ago, before this was a popular philosophy in management. And his company, last time I checked, had gone nationwide. And we still talk, "Hey, how you doing, Ken? Great, and we'll gum it up for a while because I miss the Australian accent. So I call my Aussie friends periodically. So it works. It totally works. So again, I go back to what I said previously, is like, when leadership embraces it, when leadership embraces the investment as a value of its team members, then what happens is there ends up being an overall pervasive culture of caring, which is one of the 10 competencies of conscious capitalism. So it's a really important thing to do, and the assessment process is just part of that journey, but it's an important piece. It's a more granular piece of what makes companies actually fly. So I love speaking more granular about business rather than more generalized, because this gives people an idea of what they can do.
Oh yeah, I mean, we get enough generalization out there. We get the fluffy, believe in yourself, or whatever that is in a LinkedIn post, But yeah, that's what I love about this is digging in and okay, great, yes, I agree. What do I do? And to have some of those answers is fantastic.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing this. This is
Welcome,
wonderful.
buddy.
How do people, if people want to take this assessment, do they reach out to you to kind of go through that process?
Yeah, all they have to do is just shoot me off an email. And I know you'll put my email somewhere, but I'll just say it. It's Gary, Gary, at peopleistic.com. That's peopleistic.com. And just contact me and we'll have a chat and we'll go from there.
Perfect. Awesome.
You have a great one. It's so good to see you.
Likewise. And we'll see you all next time.
Yes. Have a great one. Thank you so much for joining us and being part of our community.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Concentric. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd certainly like a great review from you on your favorite podcasting platform. But more than that, what really makes a difference to a show like ours is a recommendation to someone who would love this show like you do. Word of mouth referrals to your network and your podcast devouring friends is incredibly helpful to the growth of this show. For episode links and info, go to concentricshow.com. Thank you so much, and remember to keep building alignment to build a better life.